When Perry Stone took the stage, no one expected what would happen next. In a moment that stunned the audience, he revealed a shocking truth about Joni Lamb that instantly set off waves of speculation and disbelief. This wasn't just another passing comment, it was a bombshell that left people scrambling for answers. What did Perry say? Why now? And how will Joni respond to a revelation this explosive? One thing is certain, nobody saw this coming. Perry Stone has always been known for his bold words and prophetic style, but no one expected what came out of his mouth during a recent livestream. What was supposed to be a simple update quickly shifted into a confession that left his audience stunned. Sitting in front of the camera, with a calm yet heavy tone, he spoke a sentence that immediately sent shockwaves through the faith community. Joni Lamb, one of the most recognizable faces in Christian broadcasting, had been using her position at Daystar to do far more than just lead a network. According to Perry, she was controlling the very direction of Christian media itself. For years, people had whispered about how things worked behind the scenes at Daystar. Rumors of pressure, expectations, and unspoken agreements floated around, but most dismissed them as gossip. After all, Joni had always presented herself as a steady hand, a co-founder keeping Marcus Lamb's vision alive. But Perry didn't speak like someone repeating gossip. His words carried the weight of a man who had lived through it. He admitted that even he had felt the pressure, that financial support from Daystar came with invisible strings. With his voice cracking, he said there were unspoken expectations about the kind of prophetic messages he was supposed to deliver, and that at times, it felt less like support and more like control. The moment didn't feel like a rant or an attack. It felt like a confession, as though Perry had carried this burden for too long and finally reached the point where silence was no longer possible. "This isn't just about television," he said. "It's about shaping the voice of God's people for someone else's agenda. And I can't stay quiet anymore." The words were simple, but the impact was explosive. Viewers flooded the livestream chat, social media lit up with clips, and hashtags connected to both Perry and Joni began trending within hours. Some praised Perry for his courage, calling him brave for saying what others had only whispered in private. Others accused him of stirring division, questioning his motives. But whether people agreed or not, one thing was clear. He had ripped the lid off something much bigger than himself. By putting his own name and reputation on the line, Perry Stone transformed years of speculation into a public crisis. And in that moment, the story of Joni Lamb and Daystar would never look the same again.
Make a statement up front as we talk about 2025 and the word that the Lord gave us. People will send us text messages sometimes personally, or they'll send us an email to the office because they know that the Lord has helped me over the past 30 years to see things before they ever happen.
Here goes at Perry Stone, defending Daystar again. He's now posting dreams about a lake filled with fish and souls where evil, gossiping people are stopping fishermen, ministers from fulfilling their calling. Perry, why don't you post the dream you claim you had? Yes, I heard from more than one close source about a year ago where you saw at Daystar Joni and Rachel Lamb Brown drowning in a lake. While Joni was yelling, I didn't know this was going to happen. Wow. Is that true, Perry Stone? Did you have a dream with Joni and Rachel drowning in...
When Perry Stone spoke out, it was like the first crack in a dam. For years, whispers about Joni Lamb and her role at Daystar floated quietly in the background of Christian media. People talked in private, behind closed doors, but rarely in public. No one wanted to challenge someone with her level of influence, and even those who had doubts kept them to themselves. But once Perry put his reputation on the line, the whispers began to turn into something louder, stronger, a chorus of voices that could no longer be ignored. At first, it was just a few people. Former employees who had once worked at Daystar began sharing vague stories on social media. They didn't always name names, but the details were clear enough. They wrote about strange decisions, about leadership that seemed more focused on control than faith, about loyalty being valued more than honesty. Each post was like adding fuel to a fire, and people who had been watching from the sidelines started connecting the dots. Then came the ministers. Pastors who had partnered with Daystar in the past began hinting at their own experiences. Some admitted that they had felt pressure about the kind of messages they preached on air. Others claimed that if you wanted airtime or support, you had to fall in line with an unspoken agenda. It wasn't written in contracts, but it was understood. If you didn't align yourself with what Joni wanted, opportunities dried up fast. Perry's statement gave them permission to say what they had held back for years. As these stories grew, the tone shifted. What started as rumor began to sound like testimony. Different people from different places were sharing accounts that sounded eerily similar. Allegations that Daystar used financial support as leverage. Claims that pastors were encouraged to emphasize prosperity messages that benefited the network. Stories of individuals being silenced or pushed out when they asked too many questions. Each new voice added weight to Perry's words, making them harder to dismiss as exaggeration. Social media amplified everything. Clips of Perry's livestream spread across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, where pastors and commentators dissected every line. Some defended Joni, insisting she was being unfairly targeted. But others joined the growing chorus, saying they too had seen things that didn't sit right. Within days, hashtags about Joni Lamb were trending, and the story that once lived only in whispers was now everywhere. What made it even more powerful was how personal some of the stories felt. One former employee described the atmosphere at Daystar as walking on eggshells. Another said it was like living in two different worlds. The smiling, polished image that went out on television, and the tense, controlled environment behind the cameras. Ministers spoke of subtle but constant pressure to frame messages in ways that benefited the network. A few even claimed they were directly asked to avoid certain topics that might bring criticism or controversy. The consistency in these accounts gave them credibility. Not everyone provided proof, but the patterns were hard to ignore. The same themes, control, pressure, loyalty tests, came up again and again, painting a picture of leadership that seemed far more concerned with power than with ministry. Viewers who once dismissed the rumors as gossip began to wonder if they had been blind to something bigger all along. As more people spoke up, the sense of betrayal deepened. Joni had always been seen as a trusted face, someone who carried herself with grace and faith. For decades, she was the steady presence at Marcus Lamb's side, and later the leader who carried on his legacy. To now hear that she might have been orchestrating things behind the scenes for her own agenda hit hard. It wasn't just about leadership, it was about trust. The chorus grew louder every day. Former staff, pastors, even supporters who had donated to Daystar for years began speaking with disappointment. Some posted old donation receipts online, saying they now questioned where their money had gone. Others admitted that they no longer felt comfortable watching the network, unsure if the sermons and shows they were seeing were genuine or carefully crafted to fit someone else's plan. What had once been private suspicion was now public outrage. Blogs began covering the story, podcasts debated it, and news outlets in both Christian and secular media picked it up. Each time the story spread, more people came forward, adding their voices to the growing sound of disillusionment. It wasn't just Perry Stone's accusation anymore. It was dozens of testimonies piling up, one after another. Through it all, Joni Lamb remained silent. Her refusal to respond only added to the noise. Every day she didn't speak was seen by some as confirmation that the allegations were true. Others held out hope that she would explain everything and clear her name. But silence in a storm can feel louder than words, and in this case, it made the chorus of voices sound even stronger. The whispers had finally turned into a movement. What was once dismissed as gossip had become a public reckoning, and now, instead of one man speaking into a live stream, the entire Christian community was buzzing with the same question: how much control did Joni Lamb really have? And if the stories are true, what does that mean for the future of Daystar and the trust of its viewers? By then, it was no longer possible to put the lid back on. The whispers had become a roar, and whether the details could be proven in court or not almost didn't matter anymore. In the court of public opinion, the damage was already done. Joni Lamb's name, once synonymous with faith and stability, was now tied to one of the loudest scandals Christian broadcasting had ever faced. The collapse of trust didn't happen in one moment. It didn't even start with Perry Stone's live stream. That was only the spark. What truly caused the breakdown was what followed. The flood of doubt, the silence from Joni Lamb, and the slow realization among viewers and supporters that things at Daystar might not have been what they believed all these years. For people who had tuned in faithfully, who had given money, prayed along with broadcasts, and trusted the faces on the screen, this felt personal. It felt like betrayal. At first, many viewers pushed back. When Perry's words went viral, supporters of Joni defended her online. They said she had spent decades serving the ministry, and that this was just another attempt to tear down a woman of faith. Some even accused Perry of jealousy or exaggeration. But as more testimonies and rumors surfaced, some from insiders, some from ministers who had worked with Daystar, the defenses grew weaker. People who wanted to believe the best began to feel conflicted. The silence from Joni made it worse. Instead of responding directly to the accusations, she stayed quiet. No interviews, no statements, no attempt to address the swirling storm. In some situations, silence can be wise, but here it became fuel for suspicion. Every day without a response was another day for critics to suggest she had something to hide. In the age of social media, silence is rarely neutral. It is interpreted as guilt, and in this case, it was devastating. Viewers began turning away. Families who once watched Daystar every morning said they could no longer sit comfortably in front of the television. People who had donated faithfully for years started questioning whether their money had gone towards spreading the gospel or funding personal agendas. Some even posted their donation receipts online, expressing regret and anger, saying they felt manipulated. Trust, once strong and unshakable, was unraveling in real time. Inside churches, the conversations were just as sharp. Bible study groups, prayer circles, and casual talks after Sunday services started to include questions about Daystar. Was it still safe to support them? Was it ethical to keep giving? Pastors reported that their members were confused, embarrassed, even ashamed to be connected to a network that suddenly carried the weight of scandal. For ministries that had relied on Daystar's platform, the ripple effects were heavy. Some leaders quietly pulled back, canceling appearances or distancing themselves in public statements. The collapse of trust didn't just affect viewers, it hit advertisers, donors, and partners. Companies that had once proudly associated with Daystar began rethinking their sponsorships. No one wanted to be tied to a brand under this kind of scrutiny. Even ministries that paid for airtime grew hesitant, worried that their own reputations could be damaged by the association. Behind the scenes, insiders reported that morale within the network plummeted. Employees felt caught in the middle, loyal to their jobs but fearful of being connected to something that might collapse. Social media made the collapse visible in ways it never could have been in the past. Hashtags criticizing Joni and questioning Daystar trended for days. Videos breaking down Perry's words racked up millions of views. Old clips of Joni's interviews resurfaced, rewatched through the lens of suspicion, with people searching for signs they had missed before. Every pause, every phrase, every smile was suddenly questioned. What once looked like leadership now looked like manipulation to many. The pain was deeper than just media scandal. For many believers, Daystar had been a spiritual lifeline. It was the channel they turned to in moments of struggle, the place they heard encouragement when life felt heavy. To suddenly suspect that the people behind those broadcasts might have been manipulating the message for personal gain cut to the heart. It wasn't just about money or influence. It was about faith. If Daystar could be corrupted, what else might not be what it seemed? The anger spilled into wider Christian media as well. Bloggers and podcasters began calling the scandal a symbol of a bigger problem. Ministries becoming too much like businesses, leaders prioritizing money and control over genuine faith. Joni Lamb's name, fairly or not, became a face for that frustration. She represented not just one network under fire, but the uneasy feeling many had carried for years about televangelism and mega ministries. As days turned into weeks, the trust that had taken decades to build collapsed with stunning speed. It didn't matter that Daystar had once been a beacon, a place millions looked up to. In the court of public opinion, perception is everything, and the perception now was that Daystar wasn't trustworthy. Even if Joni were to eventually defend herself, the damage was done. Trust once broken rarely comes back, and when it does, it comes back slowly, never fully the same. The collapse of trust left scars far beyond Joni and Daystar. It left believers second-guessing their faith in Christian media as a whole. It left donors hesitant to give, unsure of where their money would really go. It left viewers searching for other places to find encouragement and teaching, places they hoped would feel more authentic. What had once been a household name in Christian broadcasting was now a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly credibility can vanish. In the end, this was more than just a scandal. It was a breaking of confidence, a collapse of trust that reached from living rooms to churches to the entire faith community. Daystar may survive in some form, but it will never again be what it was. And for many, the trust they once had in Joni Lamb is gone forever. The future of Daystar feels like it's hanging by a thread. For years, the network was seen as one of the strongest names in Christian broadcasting. Families trusted it, churches supported it, and millions of viewers tuned in around the world. It wasn't just another television station, it was a spiritual home for many people who wanted daily encouragement and a connection to their faith. But after Perry Stone's accusations and the storm that followed, that strong foundation has started to crack. The atmosphere inside Daystar has changed completely, and its future is now more uncertain than ever. Behind closed doors, the mood is heavy. Employees who once walked the halls with confidence now whisper in corners, unsure if they'll even have a job a year from now. Meetings that used to focus on growth, expansion, and programming now revolve around damage control. Morale has dropped, and people feel caught between loyalty to the Lamb family and fear of being tied to a scandal that shows no sign of going away. Some staff members have already started updating their resumes, preparing for the worst. Others are clinging to hope that the storm will pass, but even they admit things may never return to what they once were. On the outside, the audience is fractured. Loyal viewers, the ones who watched faithfully for decades, are now questioning everything. Was the content they trusted really inspired by God, or was it shaped to fit hidden agendas? Many supporters say they no longer feel comfortable donating, and some have even announced publicly that they are cutting ties with the network. In an age when ministries depend on trust and consistent financial support, this kind of doubt is dangerous. Once people stop believing in the mission, it becomes nearly impossible to keep the lights on. Financial troubles are already surfacing. Donations, which had been slowing in recent years anyway as younger audiences moved online, have now taken a sharp drop. Sponsorships and advertisers are quietly pulling back, not wanting their brands connected to controversy. Ministries that once paid to air their programs on Daystar are looking for other platforms where they won't have to worry about reputational damage. What was once a steady stream of income is drying up quickly, and without it, Daystar's entire operation is at risk. Inside the boardroom, the debate is fierce. Some believe the only way forward is to completely rebrand, cut ties with Joni Lamb, bring in new leadership, and present a fresh face to the world. They argue that the network's survival depends on proving to viewers and donors that the old ways are over. Others, however, see that as betrayal. After all, Joni co-founded Daystar with her late husband Marcus and has carried his legacy for years. Removing her would be like erasing part of the network's history. This divide has created tension at the top, with no clear decision about which direction to take. The larger problem is that Christian broadcasting itself has changed. When Daystar was at its peak, television was king. Families gathered in their living rooms, flipping through channels, and Daystar became a trusted place for sermons, worship, and inspiration. But now, younger generations don't watch TV the way their parents did. They go to YouTube, TikTok, podcasts, and live streams for spiritual content. Independent pastors and online ministries feel more authentic to them, less tied to big money and big names. Even without scandal, Daystar was already at risk of becoming outdated. With scandal attached, the danger is even greater. For Joni Lamb personally, the road ahead looks even harder. Some insiders think she will eventually issue a statement, try to defend herself, and reclaim control of the narrative. Others believe her silence is a sign she's preparing to step down, either voluntarily or because the pressure from the board becomes too much. If she leaves, it would mark the end of an era. But it could also be the only way for Daystar to survive. The network may need a complete break from her leadership if it wants to rebuild any kind of trust with the public. The possibility of Daystar fading away is now very real. Once considered untouchable, it now looks fragile, maybe even hollow. Without strong donations, without loyal viewers, and without confidence from partners, the network can't keep operating at the same scale. Downsizing, rebranding, or even shutting its doors are all on the table. The conversations happening behind the scenes are no longer about growth or expansion, they are about survival. What makes this so heartbreaking is how quickly everything has unraveled. For decades, Daystar was celebrated as a beacon of Christian media. It carried hope into millions of homes and presented itself as a ministry rooted in faith and family. People trusted it, invested in it, and believed in it. But the allegations, the silence, and the growing doubts have stripped away that image. Even if the network manages to stay alive, it won't ever look the same. The scandal has also exposed a bigger problem for Christian media as a whole. Critics are now pointing to Daystar as proof of what happens when money, influence, and faith become too tangled. They argue that Daystar became less about ministry and more about business, and that the focus shifted from serving God's people to protecting power and control. Whether or not every accusation against Joni Lamb is true almost doesn't matter anymore. The perception is out there, and perception is often just as powerful as fact. The coming months will be critical. If Daystar tries to ignore the controversy and carry on as usual, it risks losing whatever trust it still has left. If it makes bold changes, it might survive, but it will never go back to the way things were. The golden age of Daystar is over, and what comes next is uncertain. Its future doesn't rest on its past successes. It rests on whether people can ever trust it again. And right now, that trust is hanging by the thinnest of threads. Daystar's story is no longer just about one network. It's become a cautionary tale. It shows how fast influence can crumble when trust is broken, and how even the most powerful ministries can fall apart if their foundation isn't built on transparency and integrity. Whether Daystar survives or fades away, one thing is certain: the faith community will never look at it the same way again.